Hi, I'm Kristen, and this is the Simple Handmade Everyday Podcast where I talk about living a creative, intentional life. I like to chat about quilting, knitting and cross-stitching, what I'm reading and watching, and a little bit about self-care, productivity, and keeping a cozy, organized home. I've got my tea in hand, so grab yours and let's settle in for a chat. This is episode 100. Hello, friends! Episode 100! Woohoo! I'm very excited about that landmark. I kind of blew right past my 5-year benchmark, which was in February, just a couple of months ago. But 5 years at this, 100 episodes. Who would have thought? Well, before we get going, grab your lovely beverage. I picked my favorite tea to have today, which is the Harney & Sons Black Currant. I've talked about it before. It is just the most wonderful black tea that they make. I've got just a splash of this non-dairy milk from Trader Joe's. They have it's like almond macadamia cashew blend, and it is wonderful as a little splash in my tea. So anyways, so we're at 100 episodes. I was trying to think of something a little fun to do, so I've got a couple fun things. One is there will be a Fat Quarter Shop gift card giveaway for a $50 gift card to Fat Quarter Shop. There'll be a little bit more about that at the end of the podcast about how to enter for that one. And I put in a kind of an Ask Me Anything into the Simple Handmade Everyday Facebook group. And so I'll do a little bit of a Q&A at the end of the episode. Meanwhile, I'm coming to you on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, April 2nd, 2023. And after all the rain we've had, everything is so green and it's sunny. It's mid-60s. And I'm so sorry to just be flaunting this to all of you in Michigan and Minnesota, Wisconsin. I know that it's not getting to be spring, or it doesn't seem like spring where you are, but it is finally feeling like spring here. I don't know if we've got any more rain in the forecast, but we went hiking yesterday, my husband and I, to this place called Charmley Park it's in Malibu. It's like up in the mountains overlooking the coastline, and we went really to see the wildflowers. And I think we're still a little early. There were some things in bloom, but I was kind of expecting more. That's a real wildflower hike, and so we'll have to head back there. But it was absolutely gorgeous. So that was a fun way to spend the morning. And then I used up the rest of my birthday gift card to the spa and had a massage in the afternoon. So I was feeling pretty pampered there. I think I talked last episode about for my birthday, I got all sort of pampering things, and I have used all the gift cards up now. I got a facial, a massage, and a pedicure. And I'm at to the point in my life where I buy most things that I want, within bounds, but I don't buy things like that very often. So it is kind of the perfect gift. It's something that I want, but wouldn't necessarily spend the money on. So that's been fun. With the sort of advent of this spring light and the little bit warmer weather, I'm getting the spring cleaning bug. And if I was really faithful to the Fly Lady system, I would never have to spring clean. That is the point of the Fly Lady system, which I have not been great about lately. But there's something about the feeling is overcoming me. Just throw up the windows and deep clean everything. So we'll see if I make any progress on that, but that is exactly how I'm feeling. And I haven't made too much progress on it because March was a bit of a revolving door of kids coming home. And not that I'm complaining, but Ben came home from college early in March. Then Chloe came the next week. We had 1 week off. Then Jonah and Ben came again. Then Ben here was for spring break. And so, I like to be available. Even it's not like the kids, make their schedule around me, but I just like to be available to do whatever I can with them while they're home. So but now that things are settling down a bit, I need to start digging in. I'd like to do a real deep job on the kitchen. And if you've been listening for a while, you know that one of my big goals for the year is to take the 2 kids' rooms and redo them for our current life, so to speak. So we've made some headway into that. We've got a bed that's been delivered for what I consider the boys' room. And we're going to have a queen size bed in there. And so we need to get the bunk beds out, and there's bookshelves in there from IKEA I measured them to, they're like 42 inches tall. There's a wide center one and two smaller side ones. And I am going to take those out and put two of them. I'm going to take the wide one and one of the smaller ones, and I'm going to put them in my sewing area. So I sit at the dining room table. Currently behind me is the ironing board. And to the right of me are just these kind of older, not well-shaped bookshelves. Actually, one of them was from when I was a teenager, and it was for like my record player. So it's very awkwardly shaped, but I've used what we've had, in that space. So I'm going to get rid of that. And there's a rolling cart, like an IKEA rolling cart. I think it's from Michael's though. So I can put that somewhere else. And I want to put so if you can picture sitting at your dining room table, and to the right is a short wall, and I want to put my ironing board there. This is in some ways inspired by watching a Lori Holt video, and she has that setup where she's sitting at her sewing machine, and then it's even low, so she does not even have to stand up. She can just press, she can just swivel in her chair and press. So I'm wondering if I can put a ironing board there. I think my current one is about an inch too big. So we'll see how this works. I looked, there's, apparently kind of a variation in sizes of what would be considered a standard ironing board. So maybe I'll get a little bit, I found one like for $24 at Target. Maybe I'll get a bit of a smaller one and kind of like to have it lower. So I could do that. And so then behind me, where the ironing board is currently, I can put these two bookcases, and that is going to give me so much more space to put things. So this, it's this whole cascading event, as you could imagine. What I really want to do is just go Marie Kondo style and collect all the sewing stuff from all over the house and put it in one place and then start rearranging. And I feel totally overwhelmed by this, but it would be so nice to get it done. And I kind of did that during COVID, but then I had to tuck everything away because that really wasn't my sewing space for a while because my son was using it as his desk. But so that's a project that I am both excited and scared of at the same time. But anyway, so even maybe this weekend I might, and I'm sort of committing to my sewing space being a disaster for probably a few weeks, which is the first thing that you see when you walk in the door. So that is kind of, but I don't know, nobody's visiting me. It does not matter. So anyway, so I'm excited about doing that. And I'm going to call and have the painters come and give me estimates on painting the two kids' rooms. And I'm feeling, so we're in April, not quite halfway through the year yet. And I'm I always feel like I have these big goals and it just takes me a while. I'm on this very slow start, but I think things are going to start falling into place here. And that is going to make me very, very happy. So that's kind of what's going on in my neck of the woods. Let's get on with the show. Before we start talking quilting, I would like to once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank the Fat Quarter Shop for sponsoring this podcast and for providing a $50 gift card to one lucky winner in celebration of 100 episodes. The Fat Quarter Shop is a one-stop shop for quilting fabrics and supplies for quilters around the world. They stock quilt shop quality fabrics, pre-cuts, quilt kits, patterns, notions, and even cross-stitch supplies. So this month, I always check this for you, the basic of the month, which is 20% off, is the Art Gallery Fabrics Pure Solids. I don't know if you've ever sewn with Art Gallery fabrics. They have a different feel to them, and they are absolutely yummy. So they've got both yardage and fat quarter bundles of if you want to try out their solids. I think you'd really like them. And they're also doing a really fun quilt along. They do 1 million quilt alongs over at Fat Quarter Shop, and they are doing a free one called the Triangles on a Roll Quilt Along. So it's a 7-week long sew along and has a free quilt pattern that's specially designed for their triangle paper. So if triangles are a challenge for you, particularly half square triangles, this quilt along might help you kind of just challenge yourself and help you master that patch. So it uses 3 different sizes of triangle paper, like 2-inch, 3-inch, and 4-inch. And if you've never used triangle paper, it's basically foundation paper piecing for triangles so that they all come out absolutely perfect. You never lose points. It's a really good way for doing them. But if you'd like to do the quilt along, but you don't want to use the triangle paper, they also have information on how to cut the half square triangles the traditional way. So either way, it might be a really good skill builder for you. So the design has this beautiful center medallion, big old star, and then it's surrounded with a border of different kinds of stars: Ohio star, sawtooth star, friendship stars. Just basically, you name it, it's probably in there. So you might want to check that out. As always, I will put a link in the show notes so you can get all the information. So let's get on to quilting. I'm actually recording 2 weeks from my last podcast, so I'm kind of sad to say that I haven't done a lot. I did get completely caught up with my Scrappy Spools quilt along with Fat Quarter Shop that I'm doing, and that was really fun. And once again, it's a Lori Holt pattern with little patchwork, little quilt blocks that at the end you set them all in this little setting that makes them look like they're in spools. So they're about 5 or 5.5 inches, that you're sewing. So they're kind of small. And I feel like what I'm really liking about this project is I'm kind of building a scrap system at the same time. I talked a few podcasts ago about when I sat down to do it, and when I looked at, there's a lot of 1.5-inch squares and strips. And it's like, if I just was like looking at my stash and pulling things, I pulled out a selection of fabrics that I liked and I'm going to pull from these for this quilt. And then, to cut these little 1.5-inch patches and stuff, I was like, this is so painstaking. This is not fun. So what I did was start to build my own scrap system. So I took just a range of the colors of some blues and pinks and greens and yellows, all the colors that I'm using, and I just cut a bunch of 1.5-inch strips. And same thing with some like low volume, for my kind of the backgrounds. And it just, picked, 25 or 30 fabrics and just trimmed that. And then from there, started pulling from blocks, and that worked so much better. And now I'm far enough into it that I'm a little bored of those fabrics. I'm like, okay, I've used a lot of those already. So I just kind of spent one evening cutting a bigger selection. And at the same time, the other size that it seems to be the most common in this pattern are 2.5-inch strips. So I'm doing some 1.5-inch strips and then like a 2.5-inch strip and throwing them in my little scrap baskets. So when I first started this, I copied the Lori Holt method, where she has these this kind of woven plastic basket from Target. And I went and bought, maybe 5, I think, however many she uses for her sizes. And I just let them sit in my sewing room for a while, but they were never really my style. And so I eventually returned them, and I bought the, what are they called? Bright Room from Target. So they're clear plastic. If you've ever watched the Home Edit, these clear acrylic bins are very popular. I used them all when I redid my bathroom. All the little bins inside my drawers were I think it's called Bright Room. So I bought like 4 or 5 of those. I brought them home and I tried to use those, and they were a little too small. And maybe there was a bigger size, but then that started getting expensive. So I just kind of sat on those because you can so easily return from Target. And then we went to IKEA, and I stumbled on what I think is going to be the winner. And so they are, I've got the lid right here. It's Kuggis, Kuggis. I'll put a link in the show notes. So they are little white bins. So I could argue for the clear plastic both ways. At first I thought I wanted the clear plastic so I could see the color. Then I'm like, oh, these are mixed. There is I don't need to know that these are the reds. Although these clear plastic things from Bright Room, I think I saw them, Clover and Violet, you know, I think she redid her shelves and she used them. They fit fat quarters perfectly. And that's where you really, I think, want the clear so you can see them. For scraps, not as important, although you can see the size. But but anyways, I took them back. Now I have these white little containers that are very nicely sized. They are basically 7 by 10 by 6, and they have lids and they stack really nice. And that's the one thing that the others did not have was the ability to stack. And so I've been using those, and I think that's going to work really well. And they're white, and I think they look pretty. They have a little hole you can easily put your finger in to pull them out. So I think that's where I ended up on the scrap bins. If I found something else later, I bought 4 of these. I didn't buy as many as I maybe needed because I want to make sure I liked them. But I could use these for a million different things around the house. I think they're really nice. So that's been fun, is kind of to build my scrap system, because there's a lot of these scrap quilts that I'd really like to make. I'd like to, as I said before, I really like to use my stash, which is just a bunch of fat quarters. So using some of these, cutting these down into scraps, usable scraps, I think will be, it'll help me use my stash more. I did actually go through my scrap bin as well and cut those things down to those sizes. And so that's been nice. And that's the beautiful thing about using actual scraps, because I was like, oh, like this was from that Christmas quilt, and oh, this, like it's all the memories come flooding back. So that was really nice. I'm still just 2 blocks away from finishing my Great Granny Square. I am just in I'm just frozen because I have to just make my color choices for those last 2 blocks. And I just, for some reason, have not been able to do that. I do hope to tackle that this week, unless I totally tear up my my sewing room to redo it. So we'll see. But I have been kind of thinking about my next project and what I want to do. QuiltCon kind of has inspired me towards, thinking about some modern quilt designs. So I'm kind of thinking that direction, maybe take a look through my solids. So we'll see. I'm kind of just, I want to just start playing a little bit more in the sewing room, which is something that, I'm not super good about taking the time to do, because a lot of times at the end of the day, I want the mindless sewing aspect, not the creative part. So we'll see. So that's kind of what's going on in the sewing room. But before we leave the quilting segment, I wanted to tell you about a book that was sent to me by Diane Murtha. And she is an accomplished quilter, and she has created a book called Artful Insights in Fabric. And this is pretty cool. She is one of those people she's a maker. She's just a maker through and through. She, I read in the introduction, she designed her own clothes when she was younger. She was into weaving and making, school costumes and stuffed animals, and plus all the, upholstery and canning and cooking and all, just a maker through and through. And she has put together a book of many of her quilts. So it's not a pattern book. It's more like a retrospective of her work, or sort of a quilt show of her own work. And she makes some absolutely stunning quilts. So she's got this. Let me just tell you about the book a little bit. It's got different sections in it called things like Imperfect is Still Beautiful, Simple Has Its Merits, Humorous Thoughts, Reflections, Just Because I Wanted to, things like that. And she has put different quilts in those categories. So the first quilt that I want to talk about is called Bohemian Sunflower. A lot of these quilts that she's created came from challenges, like Quilt Guild challenges. And this is something that I really noticed when I was at QuiltCon, is how many people were inspired by doing challenges. And it's something that I think I should get more involved in. Have not done that yet. But when I see the results of what other people have done to be, because of challenges, I don't know, I should get into it. So this is called Bohemian Sunflower. And it was a Quilt Guild challenge. It was just called the Sunflower Challenge. And what's interesting is she's tried many different things that failed until she finally came up with this very cool design that's got some curved piecing, like a drunkard's path for the curved part, and then a lot of these very spiky, scrappy yellow fabrics for the sunflower leaves. And she was saying that she had a very traditional quilt guild, so nobody really appreciated the modernness of it, but she loved it. And then because it took her a while to kind of figure it out, she had all these leftover blocks, so she created a second quilt from those that has kind of a similar but different design, which, so like I love that idea of using up, what you have left over into another quilt. There's this other one called Monarch, and she does this technique a lot, this 3D technique. So it's a monarch with its wing actually comes out in a 3D way. It's sitting on like an echinacea flower, and then all the quilting is done a yellow background with green thread, and that green thread just are like all the foliage behind the butterfly. It's absolutely stunning. Also very cool, like she's got this very simple half square triangle quilt that was all these sort of leftover wonky half square triangles, and she just decided to use them and turn them into something else, just again using up everything. She also has a number of portrait quilts. She's got one of her mother, one of her dog, so that is also very cool. And I think my favorite one in the book is called Garden Flowers, and it again uses this 3D technique on the leaves of the flowers, which are probably, I think they're yellow echinaceas. They've got that large cone, like a cone flower, but they're yellow leaves. And she has this little technique for doing the shadows under the leaves. It's absolutely stunning. So anyways, here's another echinacea one. She obviously likes echinacea like I do. So anyways, it is called, again, Artful Insights in Fabric, and it is just the most inspiring. It's a small book, 74 pages, for you to flip through to just be inspired and to kind of get a little glimpse into somebody else's creative process, because every quilt has what is basically an artist statement. And from QuiltCon and from this, I love reading those and going, oh, that's how that worked in your brain. I need to think about it that way. So anyways, Artful Insights in Fabrics by Diane Murtha. All right, let's move on to cross stitch. I just feel like I've not had the most prolific couple of weeks. I am just stitching away on Flea Market Flowers, which is that Lori Holt design. It's a little bit Scandinavian looking. I'm really coming into the home stretch on it, so I'm excited about that. I think I have decided on that one because it's going to be, I don't know, I'm doing this with my hands. Maybe it's 15 inches square. And I think I will try to frame it. I would love it if I could find a commercial frame. And I've decided that the eating area of my kitchen would be a place where I could display things like cross stitch. So this has been my problem with cross stitch is that I don't know what to do with it. So I tend to like to do small projects. My idea is to have a lot of little pillows that I can put in my little dough bowl. Because I'm just not going to be framing up samplers all over my house. I love it in other people's houses. It's not my style. But, the eating area, they used to be filled. So we have kind of like in our house, kind of a bay window. It kind of pops out a bit. So there's these narrow walls at angles. And during, the child raising years, there was just all kinds of children's artwork taped up everywhere. I still have like the little places with tape on the wall to prove it. And, over the years, that's all come down, and it's kind of bare. I do have a calendar. I do a family calendar every year. So that's up there, and we've got a whiteboard, but it's kind of a boring area. But I thought, this could be a place where I could put some cross stitch. So I'm thinking about that would be a place for that. Also, I went to we have this place in town called the Craft House, where you can take all these classes on like anything you can think of, soap making, stained glass, macrame, other things that I cannot think of right now, probably lettering, just all that kind of stuff. And they were having a big open house last weekend that I went to, and they had some beautiful macrame things. And I just thought, well, and actually a few days before I was down there at night, my friend and I were going to this little place, this little wine place where where we sit and knit. And as we were walking by the craft house, they were doing a macrame class, and we just stood there and watched them for a while. And the woman was like beckoning us in, like, come on in, you can do this too. We're like, no. But I was thinking, a little macrame hanging could be like a fun thing to put in the kitchen. So I'm thinking that is an area where it can be a little more crafty. So that's what I'm thinking about for my flea market flowers finish. So we'll see. I've also kind of learned that I am much better at being a monogamous stitcher. I know there's a lot of people that really like to have these choices of different projects. I am so easily overwhelmed that I'm just like, I'm just going to stitch on this till it's done, and then I'm going to stitch on, I think the next project I talked about before, it's this little a stack of books with a cup of tea on top of it that I'm doing as part of the Cross Stitch the Rainbow stitch along, and I'm doing that, I think it's 32 count linen with silk floss, and I'm enjoying it, but I need to sit at a table with my magnifier and my light to really do that, which is where I can stitch on my 25 count Lugana just with normal light. And so I have to commit to go, okay, I'm going to go into a different room and sit there with the light to do this thing on linen. And that's not quite as fun for me, but that is going to be my next one because those are really cute. So that's kind of what's going on with cross stitch. I feel like I've slowed down a little bit with my obsession there, and I'm kind of glad. I'm excited to get back to quilting because that just feels so familiar and so me, if you know what I mean. All right, let's talk TV shows. So I think last time I talked to you that my husband and I were watching 1923, which is one of those shows. It's got Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren, and it's in the Yellowstone series of stories. I'm pretty conflicted about that one. I mean, Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren were wonderful. It was a very hard show to watch. There were some... I was texting a friend who was also watching it, and he said, there are some unnecessary scenes. And let me just say, that's exactly right. There are some things that we just did not need to see. So I feel conflicted recommending that to you. Story was good. If you found Yellowstone hard to watch, this one was even harder. I maintain 1883 was the best one in that, sort of group of stories. So then we moved on to Picard. And now I am a total Star Trek Next Generation geek, unabashedly. So I have loved the Picard show. But season 3 here, I think it's the best. And I think a lot of it is because they got the gang back together. It's so exciting, and it's such a fun series. I'm all caught up, so now we're just waiting for the last 3 episodes to drop. But it's got, it's brought back Riker and Data and Geordi and Beverly Crusher. So it's just, it's so fun. And we watched this little behind the scenes thing with Will Wheaton. If you know him, he played Wesley Crusher. And I found out that Geordi, who is played by LeVar Burton, he has 2 daughters that are, his character Geordi has 2 daughters in this show, but one of them is played by his real life daughter. And so we saw this interview with them, and it was just so cute. They were both so thrilled to be able to share what it was, I want to say his most important role. I hate to say that though, because he was in Roots. So that was maybe his most important role, and I think his first role. And you may know him as the Reading Rainbow guy. But anyways, it was just really fun to I've got such affection for these characters, so to know that he could share that with his daughter, so that was really fun. And that's kind of what my husband and I have been watching. What I watch on my own while I'm stitching is always my Acorn shows. And the one I've been watching and I'm really enjoying, it's called The Good Karma Hospital, which is the corniest name and the corniest name for a hospital ever. And it kind of put me off watching. It's come up, as a choice for a while. And I finally dove into it, and it is about a young woman from England, And her mother was British and her dad was Indian. She did not know her dad growing up. He left when she was a baby, and she is now a doctor. And she's going through a bad breakup and is just kind of trying to figure out what to do with her life, where she sees an advertisement for doctors to go to India and be a doctor in India. Now, she has this idea that it is going to be at a very state-of-the-art kind of hospital. It's going to be this very glitzy kind of situation. And when she gets there, it is not. It is a little hospital out in the sticks. They are underfunded, understaffed. And this is not at all what she has in mind, but she decides to give it a try. And so that's kind of the basis of it. And it's, in many ways, it's your standard, hospital drama. There's a little, will they, won't they kind of situation with another doctor. And the woman who runs the hospital is actually a British woman. And I don't know the actress's name, but the one thing I have to say is that she's always wearing these amazing linen dresses. And it's on my list, man. I need to buy a linen dress. They are so beautiful, and you can just tell that they're perfect for that climate. And so I'm like looking up on Quince or Pack. There's all these linen places. I'm like, I need a linen dress for the summer. So I'll let you know how that goes. So that's it on the TV side. Oh, except for there are some things I'm excited about. I've seen that on PBS, there's a new season of Sanditon. I've talked about Sanditon. I think there's been 2 seasons so far. Yes, because I had to go back and watch the first season when the second season came out. It is about it's in England. Sanditon is a resort area that this one man is determined to turn this area into a resort, and all kinds of terrible things happen. But it's mostly about this character, this young girl who is like a farmer's daughter, and for reasons that happened in the first season, she is whisked away by this family to the seaside resort, very much out of her comfort zone. And there's all kinds of, romances that don't work and things like that. But so I'm excited about the 3rd season. I don't remember where the 2nd season ended, but that's coming out. And also on Acorn, the new season of the Brokenwood Mysteries is out, which is one of my favorite little mystery shows that takes place in New Zealand. I've talked about that in the past too. So my biggest problem these days is with all these different streaming services, how do you keep track of it all? My husband and I, we basically, like right now, we're paying for Paramount Plus, and we will pay for that till all the Picard episodes drop, and then we'll probably get out of that, and I don't know, then get over to Apple TV once all the Ted Lasso episodes have dropped. But I feel like we need a very complicated spreadsheet about what shows are on which streaming services and when have all the episodes dropped so that we can just binge them. It's just very complicated these days, isn't it? So on books, I got to tell you that I have started and abandoned like 3 books in the last couple of weeks. I've just not found my right comfort reading at this point. I'm not sure why. One book that I want to give another try to is, it's called Still Life by, now I have to look it up. Hang on. It's by Sarah Winman, and I have heard so many good things about this book. So I got it on Audible when I had some credits I got out of Audible, because that's another thing that I got in on a special and then I got out. And there's something about the audiobook that I'm just having a hard time concentrating on it. So I think I need to just go on a long walk and kind of get into it, and then it'll be fine. I heard from a number of you who have read Remarkably Bright Creatures, which I talked about last time, and who also enjoyed that. So that was fun. I think it's in about 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks from today, I'm going to go listen to the author speak on that book. So that's fun. And so I'm just back to listening to Anna Karenina, which I will be doing for the rest of my life. I still have like 29 hours to go. It's crazy. It is the slowest moving book ever, but I'm enjoying it. It's all good. But I was listening while I was cleaning this morning to this whole sort of side story, and I'm just thinking, how is this moving the plot forward? Like, I just feel like perhaps that book could have been edited a little bit tighter. Just saying. So yeah, sorry, not much on the book front. Oh, I also have to just give a shout out to Sherry McConnell over at A Quilting Life, who apparently heard me talk about laundry love and said, oh, you know what? I have that book. I haven't read it. And now she's into it and loving it too and ordering her soap flakes and all the things. So laundry geeks unite. I feel vindicated. Okay, let's get on to the Q&A. I've got the Facebook group up on my screen. Let's see if I can handle two things happening on my computer screen at once. So, thank you for everyone who asked a question whenever I do that. I've done it a few times. I'm always afraid that nobody will answer. Nobody will have a question. But let's start with Robin's question, which is, how did you decide to get started and what helped you persevere? And I assume that what you mean about that is the podcast. So, I'm probably doing this in the wrong order. So a lot of you know that I'm friends with Frances Dowell. She's over from the Off Kilter Quilt, and she had a weekly podcast for many years. I don't even know how she did it every week. She had this great format of quilt diaries where she would just kind of record when she was in the sewing room over the week. It was a great way to do it. So I'll talk a little bit more about her in a little bit, and because someone asked how we became friends. But so I have this friendship with her where we talk daily through this app called Voxer, which is, so she records something in the morning, and then when I wake up, I listen and I reply, and it's just like this discontiguous conversation, which I know sounds really weird, but it actually works beautifully. And so I was talking to her, and by that time, I think that she was recording less, and we were kind of talking about how quilting podcasts were going away. And it was actually her suggestion said, I think you need to do a podcast. And she just kind of laid out the exact format that I still use to this day. You should talk about what you're quilting and what you're knitting and like the shows you're watching and the book you're reading and stuff you're doing around your house. I think people would like it. And I was like, really? She probably suggested it 1 year, and it took me at least a year and a half for me to really do it. I was very intimidated by it. I do think that talking on Voxer, which is just holding up one end of a conversation for an extended period of time, helped me do a podcast because, I am just, you're just talking into a microphone for an hour. And Voxes are shorter than that, but it just kind of got me into the swing of it. So she is the one that suggested it. And then it just turned out, I was so nervous. And I still to this day, every time I put a podcast out, I always feel a little insecure about it. I always feel like it's a lot of navel gazing. It's a lot about me. Like, why would you guys care about this? So I try to make it, about you guys too, because it's not just about me. But I always feel very insecure every time I put a podcast out. So whenever I hear you guys that it resonates with you, or that it's just like having tea with a friend, that's exactly what I want. And that is what's kept me going all these years. I mean, I've had, definitely, I've had stretches where I've been very good about every 2 weeks. The first summer after I started, I went all summer and didn't podcast because I didn't know how to do it when the kids were home. I kind of figured that out eventually. And I just recently had this 6-week break that didn't mean to. So I just kind of fit it in when I can. But it's the hearing from you guys that is what keeps me going. It also gives me some accountability that works better sometimes than others for continuing to sew and to create things so that I have things to talk about. And so that is sometimes when I drag my feet on it is because I feel like I don't quite have enough to talk about. But having the different segments kind of helps, because if there's not a lot of quilting, then probably I'm watching a lot of TV. So anyways, I hope that's what that was what your question was there, Robin. And so here's Deirdre. She says that you often refer to having to travel for work. What is it that you do? So I have a degree in marketing, and as soon as I got out of school, I went to work for this small software company where I continued to work for 10 years until I got married. And that is, in fact, where I met my husband, and my husband still works there. So then after I started having kids, it was like 15 years off. And when the new car, braces, travel sports bills started to add up, I realized I probably needed to go back to work part-time. And I was so lucky that they took me back as a part-time position, and that was the best thing that ever happened. I didn't really realize how much the world was going to change in those 15 years. I mean, like, the internet took off. Social media became a thing, and as a marketer, the whole world was different. So that gave me my entry and my re-education into the world of marketing. And so I worked for them for, like another 8 years, part-time as a contractor. And it was fine. It's software for the manufacturing industry. It is the least glamorous thing that it could be. I know more about the machines that cut metal parts than you would ever think possible. Eventually, they stopped working. That company, that software company, has been bought out like 4 times. So after one of the buyouts, they said, we're not working with contractors anymore. And so now I just kind of fell into this business because someone asked for help. I work for the people that sell the software now. So it's a very expensive piece of software. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars, and it's sold by these little independent businesses. And so I kind of carved out my own business for marketing for this. I basically market this one product, and I have like a set number of activities that I do. We do, tech tip videos and webinars, and I do a lot of email marketing, all for this one group of clients. And so that's what I do. It does require some travel because I need to go see those clients. So that's when I was in Florida. There was a meeting. There is a chance I could be going to Sweden, which will be very exciting for a big group of this. So that's what I do. I am a marketing freelancer, basically. And I think part of the problem of me not wanting to create content for social media comes from the fact that I do that all day long for my job. So I'm just like, I don't want to create posts. So that's why I always have this very conflicting feeling about social media. Okay, here's a question from Teresa, and she is going to her first quilt retreat in July. And she says she's heard other podcasters say they usually bring gifts to all the people at the retreat. What would you suggest as a gift to people you've never met before? I'm probably the wrong person to ask about this because I've never been on a quilting retreat, actually. But I can tell you that from being around, I've definitely seen people do a number of things. So when I went to QuiltCon, I received 2 quilted postcards from people that I'd met for the first time. My friend Patty made one. She made them for everyone who stayed in our Airbnb, and they were all very personal. And mine had 3 pine trees, and it said, I don't have it in front of me, like greetings from 3 pines kind of a deal. It was a little, Louise Penny inspired quilted postcard. And I got one from Sarah Goer, which uses her All About Angles technique. And it was just a little modern kind of improv angles postcard. So if you wanted to do something like that, a little quilted postcard, you can Google that and you can do just whatever is your style, if it's modern or more traditional, things like that. I know a lot of people do like little coasters or mug rugs are a fun thing to do. And then if you're more like ambitious, you can do little zipper bags, things like that. But I don't think that's really required, So just like I would personally think I would do something like coasters, mug rugs, or a little quilted postcard. But if you guys listening have other suggestions because you've actually been to a retreat, please get on the comments for this episode and into the Simple Handmade Everyday Facebook group and let Teresa know what you would do. Fiona asked, how did you and Frances meet? And so let me rewind to that. So Frances had the Off Kilter Quilt podcast. And I mean, this was really in the heyday of podcasting. So I'm going to say, 2008, 2009, 2010, that time frame. I can so picture me sitting in the van outside music lessons for my son. And he was probably 9 at the time. So it'd be about 2009. And listening to her and being excited, like I could listen like every Wednesday or something. I'd listen to her while I was waiting. And so, of course, I just kind of felt like I knew her. And then I found out she was a children's book author. And I remember, and she wrote this book she mentioned on a podcast, The Secret Language of Girls. I asked Chloe, like, have you ever heard of this book? And she's like, oh my gosh, every girl my age has read that book. And so little things would happen. She would say things on the podcast, and, I would just email her every once in a while. And, just like you guys do with me, just little tidbits. And, including this one time where I was taking my daughter and her friends out on my daughter's birthday out to dinner, and they were all talking about books. And one of the girls said, do you remember The Secret Language of Girls? That was the best book I ever read. And I just, I had to tell her that. So we had just a little bit of an email correspondence going. And then I got a Fitbit. And I decided I was going to, make this push to lose some weight. And Frances was talking about this too on her podcast. And I think we were friends on the Fitbit site, how you could do that. And I emailed her and said, do you want to be accountability partners? It was a big stretch for me. I didn't really know her, but we were both into these Fitbits. And she said, yes. And so we did an email thing for years where we would just, check in at the end of the day. And over the years, the emails got longer. It wasn't just, yes, I hit my exercise and my calorie goals. It was just started talking about what was going on. And FYI, we are terrible accountability partners. We're terrible. We've been doing this for 12 years. And Frances now has actually gotten down to basically her goal weight. So good for her. Me, not so much. Although I have been up and down in those years many times. But yeah, we're just too nice to each other to really hold each other accountable. So we laugh about that's how it started. But it just was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Then I found out about this app called Voxer, where I already told you, where we exchange these messages. And then now we just check in on a daily basis, and we are knee deep in the minutia of each other's lives. So that's kind of how that happened. Okay, the next one is from Sarah. This is the same Sarah Goer who gave me my little quilted postcard. So she said, I don't think I know your origin story. How did you get into quilting? For me, so I was really into, and Sarah, you're younger than me, so you may have missed this. I was really into blogs, again, back in the heyday of blogs, I don't know, 2005 and forward. And I was into the Soul Mama blog and Posy Gets Cozy. And all of these people, in addition to knitting and embroidery, were making quilts, mostly simple patchwork quilts. But I just kept seeing them and thinking, I'd kind of like to try that. And I just really thought it would be a one and done kind of deal. As a matter of fact, I bought a pattern from Posy Gets Cozy, which I think is hilarious now, because it was how to make a patchwork quilt, how to sew squares together. But it cost $12. I didn't know anything about quilting. And so, and that is when I found, I guess it was good I bought it, because I had made clothes before where you use a 5/8 seam allowance, but obviously quilting is a 1/4 inch seam. And I was like, that seemed crazy. Also, pressing to one side as opposed to pressing seams open like you do with clothes was weird. So it was good. But I didn't make any progress on it for the longest time because I was completely intimidated by going into a store and buying 15 different fabrics to make a patchwork quilt. So it just kind of languished for a while until I, for some reason, walked into a fabric store, probably because I was making a Halloween costume and needed thread or something like that. And there was a charm pack of French General fabric, and that red and white or off-white kind of thing. And I was just like, this is so beautiful. So I bought 2. I didn't know what I was going to do with them. And then later on, I thought, I could use those as the squares. So I went back. I figured out how many I needed. I went back and I probably bought 6 more or something like that. And so that's how I made my first quilt, by just laying those out and doing that. And that is, to this day, the most beloved quilts of all the quilts I've ever made. As a matter of fact, the binding is coming off. It's worn through in places. I need to completely rebind it. And I think I really realized why quilt binding cut on the bias wears better. I never do binding on the bias. I always do straight cut binding. And so I just need to go get that kind of faded red that solid that French General has and rebind that quilt. But it is magically, I guess because it just is squares. It doesn't have a lot of seam allowance. So it's the right weight. It's the right width and length. And I tried to replicate this with a Christmas quilt that I did with these cute Sweetwater squares. And it's somehow different. It's heavier. I don't know exactly why, but I've never been able to recreate the magic of that French General quilt. And so anyway, then I was hooked, and then I went and took a class at our local quilt shop at Cotton and Chocolate. And it was the best quilting class. I think they should just use this as the standard of all quilting classes. It was a medallion quilt. And so you started, the center was log cabins, and then it's 9 patches around that. And now I'm going to completely fall apart. But then it's just like, so you've got your standard log cabins are obviously easy to make. Then you got your smaller 9 patches. You're getting better with your accurate seam allowances. Then it's, I think, friendship stars. So you're tackling the half square triangle, and then around that are Ohio stars, where then you're doing some quarter square triangles. And oh no, there's a flying geese border, and then Ohio stars. So it just was like by the end of that class I had done every different type of quilting basically. And so that was really fun. And then it just kept going from there. She also asked, if you were to walk into a quilt shop, describe the fabric you are most likely to impulse buy. And this is so boring, but my favorite fabrics to buy are like tone on tone, like blenders. Those are really the ones that I like to use the most. And kind of like abstract designs, just like off-center dots or little dashes, little things like that. Those are the fabrics that I use the most. Although, okay, if I was going to go into super buzzy, which is around here, I am very attracted to the Japanese fabrics that she has in there. I'm trying to think of Akino, I think is one of the names. I love those. They're kind of on like linen type fabrics, and I adore those, and I buy them, but I don't necessarily use them, but I do adore them. So those are my 2 answers. Okay, and this is from Leslie, who found the podcast through Sherry from A Quilting Life, which I love Sherry, and that's a great podcast, and I'm always happy when we share listeners. And so she's working her way forward from the beginning of 100 episodes. And she says, I'm curious about your family and how and what your kids are doing. I know being an empty nester is an adjustment, and it is. So without giving away too much, I never know how much to talk about my kids. So I have 3 kids, Chloe, Jonah, and Ben. Chloe and Jonah both live in San Diego. They're in their mid-20s. And they are both self-supporting, working. Chloe is a marketing content writer, and Jonah is a software developer. And they're kind of like mother, like daughter, like father, like son. And they are living the beautiful life in San Diego. And every time we visit them, I just am like, I can't believe you get to live here. They both went to UC San Diego and then ended up just staying there. So they are doing great. The youngest is Ben. He is at UC San Diego, and he is a bioinformatics major, and starting an internship. And so we are like, the biggest surprise blessing is that they are all 3 in one place. And if they all stayed there, could we move to San Diego? I would love to live in San Diego, except for the traffic. So we'll see. Making the adjustment to being an empty nester, it was, it went pretty smooth. The house did feel very empty, so we very quickly filled it with 2 dogs. And so that really, they're like our little children now. It's very funny. So they really keep us on our toes. So that has been good. And so, so everybody is, kind of on track right now. So that has been really nice. And thank you for asking. Theona also asked, would you ever consider an in-person or virtual quilt retreat? I am so inexperienced in this that I don't know. What I would like to do, my dream, is to get to Bonnie Hunter's quilt retreat. And so maybe that could be a future thing of arranging a time to go, like, let's all go this, third week of August or something like that. So, and I'm very inexperienced. I've never gone to a sew day or anything. I need to get involved in a guild, which I think I may check out the Modern Quilt Guild that's near us. But I would like to get involved in something like that. Mari asks, where is our next trip or vacation? And she's still waiting for the details of the Italy trip. Yeah, sorry about that. I have not kind of wrapped that up. That is a really good question about where our next trip is, because I'm starting to panic that I have not planned anything for summer vacation this year. After bigger vacations, we sometimes do a just like a beach house vacation. I live in California, so we can actually get to a beach house like within 30 minutes, which is very nice in case you forget something or whatever. But yeah, so we're kind of looking at something beachy this year. If this work trip works out, I could be going to Sweden in June, and I would like to kind of turn that into a little mini vacation. I loved going to Norway when I visited my daughter, and so I think Sweden would be really fun. I'm trying to convince my husband. We will see how this goes. So yeah, I don't have anything big to report. There's some things that are on our radar for the future. When we hit our 30th wedding anniversary, we've talked about doing a Viking river cruise and going all the way like down the Danube or something like that. So that's kind of on my radar as well. I shouldn't say this because I haven't done it, but I don't have any real desire to do a cruise. But I feel like a river cruise could be very cool. So sorry, not a great answer there. And last, Sharon has said that I've been her travel companion on the trip to Melbourne she does each month to visit her mom. And she would love the idea of a virtual retreat, maybe one of the hand piecing projects. Yeah, so that's it's interesting that there is maybe an interest in doing some sort of a virtual quilting retreat. I'll have to think about that. No promises, but that's interesting that you guys would be interested in that. So I think that's it. I hope I didn't miss anybody's questions. People just said some very nice things about the podcast, and I so appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you for indulging me in that. So, in celebration of 100 episodes, the Fat Quarter Shop is providing a $50 gift card. So how to enter for that is go over to the show notes, which is at kristenesser.com. You can Google Kristen Esser. You can Google Simple Handmade Everyday, and you should land there. And just leave a comment. And I'm not going to publicize this widely because really I want this to go to someone who really listens to the podcast and not just enters giveaways. So I'll put it in there, but I think I'm just going to have you guys put a comment and just tell me if you have a favorite segment of the podcast. What is it that you like? Is it the quilting? Is it I hope it's not the knitting because there's not a lot of that. Is it the books? What is that you like? And I will pick, let's see. So I will give it a week. And then I will pick a winner and get you over to the Fat Quarter Shop with a gift card. And again, thank you so much for all the support and encouragement that you guys have given me over the last 5 years, 100 episodes. This is such a fun way to build community and to really find our people. So I appreciate that. So as always, you can find me online at Simple Handmade Everyday, on Instagram at Kristen Esser, and consider joining the Simple Handmade Everyday Facebook group so that we can keep the conversation going. Have a great week.